And we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Weekend Review Show. Here I am, JSU. As usual, we'll be hosting this show. And I got two of my main boys with me. We got K Falick from his, I think, parents' house or, somebody's house. And we got Third and Schlong. What's going on here, boys? Make sure you guys hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. We're going to break down and pretty much go through the main slate. We'll talk a little bit about the showdown. I want to first talk about the Jets game from last night since it's just fresh in my head. But I'll first kick it off to you. Kevin, where are you from, first of all? Is it from your parents' house? Is that where you are?
My in-laws' house.
In-laws. Okay, there you go.
There's work being done on Casa Falick. Supposedly they're building the third moat, is what I was told by people. The how rich joke. But over at my in-laws' house in a back bedroom that has an office that is very old school feeling. They redid the whole house, but it feels very old school, having like a big massive office with no door connected to the bedroom. But yeah.
Well, now I'm the third richest guy on this show because we got Bryce with us. So you guys can duke it out for, I don't know how many moats you have, Bryce, but I would assume you got a couple.
I just got my house. I'd go to a coffee shop if my power goes out, but I think
you don't have a generator. You don't have an extra generator, Bryce?
I think our condo building might, to be honest. I mean, my power's never been out in 2 years I've lived here, so it's not really something I've had to think about.
Yeah, my power's been out for like a hour maybe, once in a while, but it's not something that happens. It seems like it's happened to Kevin a lot in the last couple of years.
I'm kidding. I'm getting a generator put into the house, and it was one of those when I told my wife I won however much I won on that baseball night where I got first and second. She goes, "Great." It was like the day after we lost power for a good 2 days, and it's like right when COVID hit, we had that big tornado that went through Nashville, and since then I think we've had like 4 or 5 long-term outages, and I'm talking about like 2 to 5 days each, or anywhere from that amount of time. And so she's like, "Great, we're getting a generator. That's the only thing I want is a generator." So all the jokes are that when you get a generator put in, you're never going to use it. So I'd be okay with no power going out the rest of my life, but would be a little funny that we get a generator and nothing goes out since. So yeah.
Yeah, that's how rich Kevin is. His wife's just like, "Perfect. You want all this money? We're getting a generator. That's it. That's what we're doing here." So backup generator season for Kevin. We did get the news that just crossed right as we were about to go live that Aaron Rodgers did officially tear his Achilles, which I think everyone assumed watching that game from last night. And I want to start there because that game, very interesting to me. One, it's a different game if Aaron Rodgers is obviously on the field. But the main thing I took away from that game, the Bills are not a good football team. Josh Allen literally lost them that game. And I know the Jets defense is good, but listen, a lot of those turnovers were just silly mistakes by Josh Allen. Just absolute, muffed the ball on one of them. He's looking away. The snap comes. He gets it. And then instead of just going down, he decides, I'm just going to pick it up and run right through everybody, run right through all these offensive and defensive linemen. And obviously that's kind of how they probably lost the game in the end, because even if they punted from there, I don't think Zach Wilson could have driven his team down the field and probably, scored and stuff. But the ball position there being so close to the red zone, that's kind of what ultimately did them in my opinion. And the big interceptions, just throwing deep on plays where he could have clearly just ran for first downs. One of those deep balls that he threw for no reason, just trying to make something out of nothing. I think it was to Hardy. He could have literally just ran for a first down, and he didn't. I don't understand why he didn't run more in that game. It was very confusing to me. But that loss is all on Josh Allen. The Jets defense was great. I want to take nothing away from him, but Josh Allen still should have easily won that game, and he didn't. He lost the team that game, and I respect it. He got up there and talked about it after and said it was on him, which that's what I think. It was completely on him. But Sean, you watched the game last night. What did you think of the game as a whole?
I was pretty screwed in DFS from the beginning, just based on my builds. My cash build had Aaron Rodgers on both sites, so that was pretty much done. I mean, you might be winning. He was 60, 70% owned, so you might be winning 5 to 10% of the time. And it's not like a situation on the main slate where if a guy gets hurt, you might be able to swap onto something crazy and make some back. So that's just dead. My GPP, I was pretty under on the defenses, so I was pretty screwed there as well. So it was just never going to be a good night for me. We did have Bills -2, and I think we were minus 2,500 live at one point in the game and ended up losing straight up. So that was a fun way to end the weekend after I had a pretty solid Sunday, but not my favorite end of the week. But, Rodgers being out kind of threw the entire game off, and it just turned into one of those really weird game scripts that you get like weird winners. It was both kickers, both defenses. I think Diggs and Allen.
No, I think Brees was in there over the
Brees
Bills. I think it was the Jets defense. Yeah.
Two kickers, one of the defenses, Brees. Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a unique build. I'm just never – the way I play, I'm not getting 3 defenses and kickers on like a combination of the 3. Like I was actually over on kickers and slightly under on defenses, but I'm just not going to get a lot of teams with 3 out of 4.
You're never going to build a lineup where you're going to captain Steph Diggs and play the Jets defense and expect for it to hit at that
I also
level.
played 100% Josh Allen. So
it was that was the crazy thing to me is that build was very, very unique. I said in chat after the game is I would never have landed on that build or anything close to it because first of all, they played Josh Allen over. It wasn't the optimal in the Millie because Garrett Wilson over Josh Allen was the actual optimal. But I don't even know how it's a very having Josh Allen with Diggs with the Jets defense is just a very interesting build structure. It worked out because Diggs got the 1 touchdown for the team and got 10 receptions and 100 yards or whatever. And then the kickers did all the rest of the work. But then on the Jets side, obviously all the work was done by the defense, except for Garrett Wilson, which nobody was going to play Zach Wilson in that situation.
Yeah, no one's playing the backup quarterback. I mean, that's a silly strategy. Unless like you thought for some reason they were going to play 2 quarterbacks somehow. Like I understood like the Taysom Love back the last couple years where he'd get some snaps at quarterback, he'd play a little tight end, whatever. Like maybe you get a carry here and there. I understand that, but you're not just playing a backup quarterback to get it. I will say though, on the Showdown show yesterday, the one thing we were me and Tony anyways were very high on was the under in that game, which I mean was clearly the best play on the board. Even if Aaron Rodgers was there, I think the under was still a very good bet. But yeah, so that hit obviously. The Bills not winning that game though, -2. That was rough. I will say I did have that bet as well. So that was definitely rough. But shout out to Wiley. I'll give Wiley some credit here. He liked the Jets. He said he was all in on the Jets yesterday. He said he liked them to win the game. Even with Aaron Rodgers out, he still was right and they won the game. If Aaron Rodgers was in, I just don't think the game goes into OT. I think the Jets would have just won by probably a touchdown. So that was a good call by him. I'll give him a shout out because he deserves it. Not many people were honestly on the Jets. I feel like a lot of people were on the Bills, and I got to give some credit where credit is due to Mr. Wiley. If you missed it, yesterday they did an Up to Lock show. I think Bryce hopped on a little bit later on in the show. Tony hopped on at the end. And guys, that's not always going to be a free show. So that's going to be a premium show a lot going forward. So make sure that code NFL17 is going to be going away soon. Get 17% off for life. Get in now. Use that code NFL17 for 17% off for life for any package you want on the site. And as long as you don't unsubscribe, you keep that 17% off going forward into basketball season, whatever you play. So make sure you get in now because that code's going to be gone soon. So, all right, that was the Monday night game, obviously. We're going to talk, though, about the main slate. I know Bryce wanted to show his cash lineups on DK and FanDuel. and talk a little bit about cash for any of you cash players. Bryce is obviously a high volume cash player, plays cash for like all these slates for all these sports and stuff. But obviously for football, Bryce, you can get a ton down, I'm sure, or more in cash games for football. But I'm going to get that screen share up. You want to start with FanDuel, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, we can go through FanDuel. So I just we'll have screenshots of kind of the chalk team and compared to what I played in. I think we did a 20-man $500 double up on FanDuel, which I think is probably the best representation of like the sharpest game that all play in general. And then on DraftKings, we have a 30-man $1,000 50-50. So those are kind of the two contests we'll go over real quick.
All right, so I got it up here on the board. You guys got it?
Yeah.
Can everyone see it? So should be up.
Yeah, so the team on the right was a heavily duped train and definitely a team that I looked at. Ultimately, I think it ended up being a 4v4 off my team. It was actually, I think it graded out as the highest priced team for me, or highest projected team, but I didn't want to play it simply because I thought Anthony Richardson was very underpriced for his role going forward. The Jags were an okay spot at home. I know there's some inherent risk in playing a rookie quarterback in his first game, but the floor he provides on the ground, running the offense Jalen Hurts ran, and you saw he got the first shot at the goal line carry last week. I just thought he was simply too underpriced for that role. Jalen Hurts was playing what I thought to be a tough road game in New England, in shitty weather against a coach that has 3 months to prepare for him running. So Hurts wasn't as much of a priority, and you'll see that on DraftKings to me as he was to some. I was fine with Richardson. The other thing I did not like about this team is I was somewhat concerned about Cincinnati going into this game. I played Nick Chubb. I didn't love the matchup for them, and I didn't want to invest in Mixon and Chase. So I don't think I was ever playing Mixon and Chase together. One of my want plays was actually Higbee over Likely. I thought Likely was a block on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, Higbee provides a pretty crazy floor for only, I think it was $600 more. So it kind of ended me up. The plays I really wanted to play were Tyreek, Chase. Sutton and Ridley were pretty close to me. Going forward, I would definitely go with Ridley. He certainly looks like the alpha in this offense. I kind of worried there might be a few too many mouths to feed. Tyreek in the best game environment of the week, I thought he could get 15 targets. I said that in chat, and I think he got 14. And he was ultra efficient with those targets, obviously, and ended up at a full ceiling game. I thought Bijan Robinson was a lock, and you could see that he was the most popular player here.
Yeah.
It was simply too cheap for his role. Nick Chubb was an island for me, and I knew he was going to be an island coming into the slate. So I think I played the 3K tournament on FanDuel, and it's not something I'll normally play with my cash team if I think it's going to be uber chalk like the team on the right. But if you're going to be different, if Jamar Chase has a decent game, my team finishes top 10 in the 3K. It cashed. I think it finished pretty easily inside the cash line. And the knock on Chubb is that he's so touchdown dependent. And I don't hate choosing touchdown dependent players on FanDuel. He had the best anytime touchdown odds of any player on the slate. And I thought without Kareem Hunt, his receiving floor would be a little better, and it was. I need to go back and watch that game to figure out where all these touches came from in the backfield, because Ford did play a decent amount, but this game got out of hand pretty quickly in the fourth quarter, and kind of developed into a piece of shit game. But yeah, that's kind of where I went the way I did, and yeah.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go for it, Kevin.
I just want to make sure people understand. I don't think Bryce is trying to show you an expensive tournament to show you that I can play this much money and stuff like that. It allows you to see what the chalk build is, because they're the sharp people that are playing and the sharks that are playing in the same tournament. So you can see what all the most common build is, while on a it's going to be this build is going to be no different than in playing it in a 3,000 entry single entry one or whatever it may be on either of these sites either. It's just that you're able to see what the most common build is in this type of situation. So I want to make sure people understand that. I don't think Bryce is saying, hey, you have to play this $500 tournament.
Oh, no, I'm not saying to play it. I'm saying
Yeah.
this is the sharpest contest that I play and would probably play. So I think it gives a best representation of my lineup to players, why other pros are going with the lineup they did. So it just overall helps you improve your game when you're seeing like what the best competition can do. And like on FanDuel, you can't even look at these games live like you can on DraftKings sometimes. So I just think it's kind of the best representation to do a rundown on these shows. I mean, I would play, and I'm going to do some more stuff on game selection this week because I got a lot of game selection questions from our users. But in general, the low dollar 50-50s in FanDuel are the best games in the industry. Like if you're playing the 5 and 10 $100-man 50-50s, combination of the skill level in those games and the rake is pretty much the best you'll find in any sport and on any site.
So Bryce, I got a question for you because when you look at the cash teams, and guys, if you're in chat and you have questions, you can throw them in the chat. And we can answer them.
Let me know like what you guys went like it and like why I went the way I did compared to the way you guys might have gone.
So I got a question. So you can clearly see that. I mean, obviously in cash ownership, you can throw that out the window. It doesn't really matter. But do you do things where you'll be on islands with guys that you kind of know the field won't be on? Like is it a thing where you try and get on an island with like one player, or does that not matter for you?
It does not matter to me whatsoever. If it happens, I know if I'm going to be on an island or not going into the slate. And if I am, then I'll get a little bit more in my aggressive in my game selections. You know, play a couple more 3 and 5 mans, play some more tournaments. Like I mentioned, I played the 3K. That's not something I normally play with my cash team. Or if I am playing it, I would play a different team if I knew I was going to be on the chalk team. And when we get to DraftKings, you'll see I did play the chalk team. So
Nick Chubb was more just
Nick Chubb was more. I thought he was optimal in the build. He was 1,200 more than Mixon, and I thought that I didn't want Mixon, and I thought that there might be a better way to spend that 1,200, and I could have gone. I think I could have gone Mixon Ridley over Sutton Chubb, and that would have ended up being close. It would have slightly beat it. Going forward, I would probably do that simply because Ridley got much more work than I thought he would. I just thought there was a ton of mouths to feed in his first game on the team. He might not be the alpha, but he was the clear alpha in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that game because I definitely agree with you. I think that Calvin Ridley showed that he's going to be just straight alpha for that team. Like there are other guys, and if you didn't watch it too, like Calvin Ridley, if he doesn't step out of bounds on that play, he has 2 touchdowns in that game. Like the play after Zay Jones caught that crazy touchdown, which by the way, if you didn't see that was a sick catch by Zay Jones and everything. But that play would have never happened if Calvin Ridley kept his feet in bounds. He scores a touchdown and he absolutely smashes. I mean, he still did great, but I think he's the clear number one, and he's going to be doing this all year. Like he's going to be a beast. But I think it's interesting because Nick Chubb, to me, I'm not a cash player, but I feel like Nick Chubb provides almost like one of the safer floors on a site like FanDuel where it is so touchdown dependent, and he's going to get 20 touches a game. Like it doesn't matter. Like he's just one of those. I feel like he's a safe cash play week in and week out, regardless, because of how many times he's going to get the ball.
I think the other thing on Mixon is people might have thought that Mixon's role might change a little bit without P. Ryan. They just seemed committed to never playing him on third downs, and they didn't. Mixon's one of my least favorite players to play in cash on a week-to-week basis. Like, I mean, if the spot's there, I'll do it. But, I'm never really a Joe Mixon guy, like if it really comes down to it. And, I mean, Nick Chubb just didn't get a goal line opportunity.
That game was a mess. That
game was an absolute mess, and that's why I didn't want 2 guys from Cincinnati on it.
Sure, that makes more.
Miles Garrett was literally hooping while playing football.
Yeah.
Live in a game. He was literally crossing over and doing shit. Miles Garrett was just absolutely owning that team. But yeah, that game was a mess.
Like, I'm fine playing two guys from a game that I think is going to be really good. Like, I played Tyreek and Mostert together, but I didn't necessarily want all that salary invested in Cincinnati when I didn't love the spot for Cincinnati as much as the market did.
All right, so we do have a question here regarding the game selection you mentioned. Are the big 50-50s better than double-ups on FanDuel?
In general, due to rake, yes. Some of the double-ups are raked a little bit lower. There used to be a browser extension that showed you the rake, trying to figure out a way around it. But no, in general, the big double-ups are raked around 13 to 14%. Or 12 to 14% around the industry. And the 50-50s and smaller field double ups on DraftKings, say, are ranked 10% or below. So, no, I think you're better off playing the 50-50s.
All right, there we go. I got this DK lineup, Bryce. So this was your cash DK lineup I'm about to show right now for those of you who play cash on DraftKings. So here's Bryce's lineup. And Bryce, I know you did pretty well in cash games too this week, right? So these lineups ended up cashing pretty good, correct?
Yeah, the 2v2 I needed to beat on DraftKings, I ended up beating. It was pretty much most of who I consider the pros in the industry played either this team you're looking at, this team with a different 3K receiver over Marvin Mims, or Jalen Hurts and Calvin Ridley over Justin Jefferson and Anthony Richardson. The reason I landed on Richardson and Jefferson, and I already discussed why I liked Richardson and didn't love Hurts, is A, I was a little bit worried about Ridley's target share, and B, I didn't want to fade Justin Jefferson on DraftKings at 8.8K. I think he is probably the best floor on the site now in terms of regards to bonus and upside. So I was 100% fine with going Richardson, Jefferson there. Once again, I didn't love the spot for Hurts. And in retrospect, I was definitely too low on Calvin Ridley. At the end of the day, this team almost built itself. You get the three best receivers. You get two solid running backs, or Jamal Williams is not a solid running back. And that's something that we'll note going forward. But he's going to have serious problems when all these guys come back from being healthy. Marvin Mims only played 17 snaps. I think that might have been an oversight, not being higher on the Rams receivers or Jaden Reed. I simply thought that he would step into the number 2 receiver role, and he ended up playing basically the number 4 receiver role. So that, I mean, you couldn't have known that before the game, but you could have gotten a Rams receiver, and I didn't like the Rams receivers as much because I really worried about their efficiency in a game. I thought they would struggle where they end up dominating.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem was too, Schlong. I think the problem was like you said, we assumed Mims would be the number 2. He clearly wasn't. I mean, they had a couple guys over him. And then on top of it, the Rams receivers, there was multiple of them. People like Higbee too. People like the running back Akers. And so it was like, okay, is it Tutu? Is it Puka? And so that was probably like a tough part from a cash perspective, was like, they're not like the safest of plays. You know what I mean? Looking back on it now, we're obviously like, wow, if you told me Puka was going to get that many targets, like, okay, he's just the absolute lock of locks. The problem was no one foreseed that. And so, you know, yeah, some people maybe guess, like, I think Puka is going to be good without Cooper Kupp in that role, but no one actually knew. And that was the thing, right? Yeah. Everyone assumed Mims would be 2. He wasn't. And this is what happens. This is why the first couple weeks it's like a feel out, right? Like, and on top of it, you were talking about Calvin Ridley. You couldn't have built a Calvin Ridley, Tyreek, Justin Jefferson team. I tried. It was like, so it was impossible pretty much. Like, so you had to nix one of those guys, and in cash, you were just unwilling to not play Hill and Jefferson. They were just clearly your 2 guys.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I thought about it. The reason this team won, and this is kind of an example of the contest looking backwards, the cash lines in the higher dollar games were a little bit lower than the bigger games, simply because there's really two teams that the pros played, and it was Hurts and Ridley on the other side. And this team edged it out because Hurts did jack shit. So, yeah, I think DraftKings was pretty much a break even for me, and FanDuel I did well on. So that was the first week of cash games. I'll be hanging around in chat, pretty much all week. If you guys have any questions on or you're welcome to DM me as well on how I can help you improve your cash games, because, coming to the site, it's really one of the strengths that I bring compared to some of the other people we brought in is these cash games. And NFL is the best sport for cash, without a doubt, simply because the fields are softer, the prizes are better, and you kind of have always to look at a team. You don't need to make a decision last minute in general.
Yeah.
Like you kind of like last night, you knew Likely was going to be out, or you knew Mark Andrews was going to be out, so Likely was going to be a play. Like, you don't need to make that decision normally in the amount of time that it would take. Like an NBA decision, you might have 5 minutes to make. So, you might make the slight wrong decision, but it ends up being the right decision. It's like a poker time clock almost, where here you have unlimited time to make your decisions.
You got plenty of time in NFL. You know what I mean? At most, even if news comes out breaking at 11:30 on Sunday, you still got an hour and a half to make a lineup. And that doesn't happen very often, where you're so shocked somebody gets ruled out in NFL. So, Falik, do you have anything from this cash build that you have any questions on for Bryce, or anyone in the chat, obviously, too?
So first of all, I'll say that I understand what you're saying about Jamal Williams, but I think he absolutely made sense on this slate. And I think that you're going to see this. I was going to talk about it later, but I think one of the questions that is going to be asked for the rest of the season is, how do you prioritize these running backs now that you're seeing roles be completely changed across the board for really every single running back in regards to what their usage is when they're on the field and stuff like that? We saw it with almost every team, that unless there's a very expensive bell cow type of player, otherwise you're going to be dealing with a lot of splits in some way, unless there's an injury of some sort. So Jamal Williams, for example, I don't think he was a bad play. The problem was that Tennessee's defense is actually they're good at, they're one of the best running defenses, and their passing defense overall is pretty awful. So I think if you have the same situation next week where Jamal Williams, and I know that they're playing on Monday night in this 2-game slate that they've created, where 2 games, one after another, hour split. But if Jamal Williams is in the same situation, I think he's 100% owned. It would be in my situation if Kendre Miller's out again this week.
Yeah.
See,
I was more
Jamal
talking
Williams
about Jamal going forward when Kendre comes back. I think he would he'd be in trouble. But I mean, if it's the same spot, I'd be willing to play him. But
I think that you're in a situation where running backs are going to be you got to make decisions on what is the impact of an injury, and or is it worth paying up for a guy when you aren't confident in their usage on a game-to-game basis. We saw it this week with Derrick Henry. I would never play Derrick Henry this season based off of what I saw this week. I don't know how you could play Derrick Henry when he was on the field for 47% of snaps this game, and it was a close game the whole game. They're splitting the snaps officially for him now. This isn't first and second down he's going to get all the usage, and third down they're going to pull him off the field. He was off the field during first and second downs this game. So I don't know how you could ever pay $7,500 or more for Derrick Henry, which is what his price is going to be.
So I got a different take on Jamal Williams. I think for cash, I understood him. For cash, he made total sense. I thought for tournaments, he was the absolute nut fade, because literally you're fading a guy getting 2 touchdowns against a team like Tennessee, who's got a solid run D. I just thought for literally tournament purposes, in cash, it made sense, because if he gets you 1 goal line touchdown, or even just the 7, it was fine. It was fine. You can make it up. Bryce made it up clearly with some of the guys. In cash, that's fine. In tournaments, when you can have 1 guy give you a bad score and still hit big in the tournament, maybe 2, but you can't have too many busts, right, to win a big GPP. And I just thought what you needed from Jamal for him to be the winning GPP lineup was a bit much to be afraid to fade him at the ownership he was at. So I thought it was a good fade. I know we talked about in the Wood Show. Yeah, go.
Jamal's the ultimate like hold your nose play to me and hope you give me 15 points on DraftKings type of running back to let you fit in the other receivers. I was much more comfortable with Mostert when Kane got ruled out. So the Saints are just such trolls at the goal line, and I never really liked playing Saints running backs. But, I mean, in theory, the play was fine. And, I mean, if I had to go back and make the same team again, I would probably play the same team just without – I mean, if we had a little bit different knowledge on Marvin Mims or Isaiah
I think
Likely,
the only person you change is Marvin Mims, if anything. Anything. But,
I mean you know, he's a rookie. It's kind of hard to know his role week one. But, I mean, every beat writer was expecting him to be the number 2 coming into this game. And he simply didn't get the snaps.
Yeah, for sure. So talking about snaps, and Falik brought up the point about Derrick Henry, and I got the snaps percentage-wise up in front of me. So just kind of running through them real quick. Main things I noticed. First of all, we know that a lot of teams are splitting a lot with 2 running backs for sure. You talked about Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears. Actually, Spears got a little bit more of the work from a percentage standpoint. I think it was like 54 or something like that. Derrick Henry got like 46 or 47, whatever it was. So the other one that was surprising was Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, where Jerome Ford got 40% of the snaps, which to me, it felt like a lot when he was coming off that injury.
But the game got out of hand so early, and it was a running focused game as well. Like there were, I'm not using this game for the Browns as the representation of what I expect the season to be. I think it's going to be interesting to see what it is, but it is something to note that Ford did get a lot of run period. But Chubb definitely is still going to be there.
I was at the Colts game. I need to go back and look at all these stats. I think games like that, you either need to completely filter out the fourth quarter, simply because the game.
You're talking the Browns game
at that point. Yeah,
you're talking the Browns.
I think you filter out the Browns game and you filter out the 49ers Steelers game. Those are the 2 games that I'm like.
The 49ers Steelers game, the Christian McCaffrey got the most by a percentage at 85% of the work, and that game was over.
I'm talking about the other side.
Oh, the Steelers side.
Yeah. Like you're not going to see Kenny Pickett throw 46 balls and the ball get run 9 times in a Steelers offense normally.
Yeah,
like I think people are going to look at Calvin Austin and like look at Allen Robinson and look at all these guys that did work for Pittsburgh on the wide receiver side and like try to see if they can do it again. And I think that it's just a really like Allen Robinson makes more sense but like putting Calvin Austin in there as like a true option on a cheap end for next week, I think doesn't make any sense at all based off of how this game went.
Yeah, well, Deontay Johnson's going to be out for a few weeks, so I'm sure people will try and stretch to one of those cheap guys. But back to the running back. So we had a few guys at 80%. McCaffrey, James Conner, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs all saw 80% of snaps. David Montgomery at 79, which was interesting. Rashad White for the Bucs at 79. Jamal Williams at 75. Mostert at 73. Deion Jackson got 71. The most surprising one to me that I'm so mad about, it's actually not even surprised now that I thought about it, but Kyron Williams got 65% of the snaps. And last year we were on the Kyron Williams.
Tried to get him so many times.
And now I got to sit and look at Kyron Williams, who outsnapped Cam Akers, outplayed Cam Akers, scored 2 touchdowns, and absolutely nutted on the field. And I was so mad at myself for not just coming back with my same take where the guy got injured on the first play of the game last year. This is what happened, and it like ruined it. But everyone thought it was somebody else, and we thought it was Kyron Williams, and then he gets hurt on like the kickoff or whatever, and that was it last year. And now he comes in, and I don't know about you guys, but he just might be better than Cam Akers. Like he just might be better than him. And that was one of the more interesting ones to me Just from looking at it, they're clearly splitting in Atlanta with Algier and Bijan. Austin Eckler saw 51%, but obviously whenever he gets touches, he just does work with those touches. But that was the most surprising one to me. Did anything stick out to you guys from what I just read?
A note on Bijan, he also was in on all the passing situations for the most part. I think he ran 18 of the 22 running back routes. So if Atlanta ever does get down, and I'm never choosing an Atlanta receiver. I think we had a question about Drake London and Cash, and I think I saw some people actually play Drake London, and I'm simply never playing Atlanta pass catchers in Cash because they'll run the ball.
You don't want to play low volume passing teams, receivers in Cash, right? Like that's definitely not the play.
Yeah, I will say that the thing to note is that Cordero Patterson was out last game as well. So like it's an unknown situation where I'm just probably going to avoid Atlanta as a whole with the price tags that you see for Bijan for sure. But I'm really happy that I'm looking at pricing for this upcoming week. I'm really happy that the Rams guys got priced up quite a bit. So like we don't have to really force ourselves into those situations. I'm not saying that they're bad situations, but like they did price Puka to 4.9, Kyron's at 5K. Like there are guys that thankfully they got priced up in this situation. They also play San Francisco, so I don't know if it's even going to matter whether you're going to want to play them. But what did you say Josh Jacobs usage?
80%. He was one of 4 that got 80% or more.
I think that you just need to identify who those. It's going to be an interesting type of season where the value of running backs is going to continue to diminish for probably 70% of these teams. And the wide receivers become valuable because they're on the field and getting all the usage. But the question is who are the guys that can break a slate at the running back position that you want to have in these situations? Like, I think you just have to, like, as much as I want to play Eckler because he's an effective guy, I don't think I'll ever play him with how I saw the offense run. And it wasn't like it was a blowout or anything like that, or the script wasn't in Eckler's favor. It was literally Joshua Kelly was on the field just as much as Eckler was.
They almost split snaps, almost exactly. It was 51 to like 49 or 48, whatever it was. So yeah,
so B. Harriot said backup running backs went crazy. There is no such thing as a backup running back anymore. Like that's the point, is that backup running backs are not a thing. They're a thing of the past. Like there's third string running backs, which like you could say, I did not expect Latavius Murray to get the usage he did last night in those like important snaps. But
by the way, what are they doing not playing him all game and then playing him on the most important snaps of the game? Yeah. Like, did that just not make any sense to anyone?
There were a lot of things that just didn't make sense with coaches this week. Like overall, like I did not understand a lot of coaching decisions, but I think there was conversation on the Manning cast that the coach for Buffalo, McDermott, right? McDermott, is that his name? Yeah, McDermott was like he may be over his head being a defensive coordinator again, like calling the defensive plays and being a head coach, because he should have in theory called timeouts before the 2-minute warning. He could have gotten the ball earlier and had more time to run his offense towards the end of the game. But yeah, I can't tell you why Latavius Murray was on the field and on important snaps after he hadn't played the entire game. But those are third string running backs. Like those are I believe backup running backs is now could even like those are your garbage time running backs. 1 and 2 are just regular running backs now for most teams.
So my last takeaway from the games, from a running back perspective, is, and I'm going to be wrong on this because I didn't draft I didn't draft as much of this dude as I probably should have in best ball. Roschon Johnson's going to become the number 1 running back in Chicago faster than I even thought. I thought it would be like at least halfway through the season before he'd overtake anybody. It's going to happen much quicker. He got 39% of the snaps, and he looked much better than Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman in that offense, like way better. And that offense is horrible, by the way. That's another thing. The play calling was absolutely garbage. They were throwing swing passes to Deontay Foreman out, like trying to get him out on the edge, and he has no speed. Like, what are we doing? They're throwing screen passes to Chase Claypool, who's just literally can't do anything. I mean, that offense is a disaster. But Roshan Johnson's going to, that's going to become a two-headed field with him being the main guy probably by like week 4. And so just get ready for it.
And I will say one thing about all these stats. You obviously want to realize who did what the previous week, but coaches will make adjustments going forward based on how some of these guys play. So if you can kind of predict those adjustments for the matchups next week, it's just an incredibly small sample, and some of these numbers could change drastically just based on what happened last week, who they were playing. Maybe the Chicago coach ends up being smart and is like, oh, Roshan should play more, and he jumps to like a 70% snap share or something like that. So that's a super important note. But it's not like these guys are coming in and just going to be like, oh, we're going to do the same exact thing we did last week. They're not all done.
Especially the teams that got pounded, right, Bryce? Like, especially teams like the Bears who got pounded.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to change things
how
up.
can we get better quickly? Like, who can we put on the field to help us? And a lot of that times it's, getting the right running backs on the field a little bit more. Yep. So,
getting the right players on the field in the right positions for your team to succeed 100%. Anything else from moving past like the running backs, wide receivers, anything else from you guys? I know we talked about Calvin Ridley a little bit, talked about Puka a little bit. Is there any other like guys that surprised you that played well this week?
Zay Flowers got over half the targets for Baltimore. I thought that was something interesting to note. He's kind of going to be Lamar's. I mean, it was without Mark Andrews once again, but he kind of seems like more of like Lamar's safety blanket to me. That was one that I noticed that stood out when I was looking at stuff.
Yeah, he definitely stood out to me just from the fact that they're just trying to get him the ball in space constantly. I thought Lamar looked terrible, but Zay Flowers definitely looked legit when he was out there catching the ball. Hopefully Lamar can fix things up. Maybe the loss of Andrews was a lot. I don't know. It just looked really bad. He looked a little slower too, honestly. So maybe it's just like first game, but he looked a little slow to me. Not as electric when he tried to get out in space. Normal plays where he could get by guys. He just wasn't getting tackled from behind by linemen and stuff like that. It was interesting. He looked just a little bit slow, but maybe that'll change as the week goes on. And everything like that. But Kevin, did you see anything that stuck out to you?
On the other side, the Texans, I think even though they only scored 9 points, I think that you have to give credit that Stroud did look pretty good overall. I think that the Baltimore's a very solid defense, but like there's a lot of conversation that Stroud looked pretty good. And you can see who's getting the usage on that team. You can't play running backs on that team anymore because you got Pierce and Singletary and Mike Boone, and at least on the receiving side, Nico and Robert Woods each got 11 and 10 targets. Like, I don't think Stroud had a bad game. People are going to consider him having a pretty lousy game, but I just don't. I think that it's underrating the situation overall when you start looking at who the Texans will be playing week to week. The matchups could be in their favor, especially if you picture them going down. Like this week, it's Texans Colts, and like I think that game actually could be a really underappreciated game on the slate with only a 40 total, but both teams are pretty lousy on defense, as we saw.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Texans did kind of stuff the Ravens a good amount. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say their defense is terrible just because they did own Lamar, but maybe it is just bad and Baltimore just had like an off day kind of offensively. But yeah, it could be a sneakier game. I will say the Colts offense, I mean, I'm not a buyer long term, but Anthony Richardson definitely had a better game than I thought. So I'll give the guys. I know Bryce played him in cash. I know my guy DC was on him big time. So I'll give him a little credit.
I mean, for that call. His upside in tournaments, but in cash, I just thought his running forward. I mean, you saw he got first crack at the goal line carries. And I think he'll continue to do that in his Shane Steichen offense. So, I mean, obviously there's some variance week to week on that. He looked okay. They got down a bit too, so they were throwing a lot. But yeah, I mean, all it took was one rushing touchdown for him to get there, and he was plus 130 to score, and he would auto beat his expectations. Yep. And, even if he didn't get that running touchdown, he still gets 16 points, which this week in cash doesn't kill you. you saw it was a really weird week of football because you saw a lot of the higher powered offense on the primetime slates, and you ended up getting there was one total over 50. Then the Browns-Bengals game came in at 48, and everything else was shit. So it was kind of a super weird week in that sense. Two more notes. McCaffrey dominated usage, and he was one of the guys I expected to not do that, especially in the game script they had. So, I mean, they probably dominate the Rams next week. That'll be another interesting thing to watch for. Like, if McCaffrey is just going to be an absolute bell cow this year, he's going to be head and shoulders above every other running back. I think Travis Etienne is someone to look for going forward. I'm very high on this Jacksonville offense. He played a ton of snaps. Tank Bigsby did come in at the goal line, but he looked awful, so there's a chance that he loses that role.
The last two where Ridley caught the touchdown and Travis Etienne sprints ahead of him to make the block. I don't know if you guys saw that play, but that play was sick. He just came it just ran out of nowhere. That dude he's good. And he was one of the backs. I said there was 4 backs. He was one of them that got 80% of the snaps. So
and Tank looked awful. The one thing he didn't get was the goal line carries. They brought in Tank on the goal line, but Tank looked god awful. So if he's getting these goal line carries and he's playing 80% of snaps in the Jacksonville offense, that's definitely a spot to target.
I think JSU will appreciate this one because I know he's a fan of his, but I don't think there's anybody faster than Shaheed in the entire NFL at this point. Like dude is a just absolute, like just blazer, just goes nuts. And like he could have had
Alec too. He makes plays, man.
Yeah.
Like he's not just he's a good player. Like he is a good, solid player. And what did he play? Did he play a lot? I mean, I watched.
He played a good amount. He even fumbled the kickoff return on the first.
Thanks, Fallick. I'm like, he's a good player. And Fallick's like, he even fumbled the first.
No, he fumbled the first play, and then still he got a ton of run. The last play of one of the last plays of the game, he caught he got 5 catches and 89 yards and a touchdown. With 2 carries for 11 yards as well. So
he played 54% of the snaps. That's pretty good. I'll take that. He's a good tournament upside type player. And then when Michael Thomas eventually gets hurt or bows out or whatever happens, that's when Shaheed will really start to make it. But he's definitely a burner type. If he's cheap, he always has that chance to catch a deep ball and take it to the house. So I do like him as a player. I thought Olave looked good too, even though Derek Carr did not. I thought Olave looked pretty good as well in that offense. So, those are just a few takeaways. Tight end position was a mess. Isaiah Likely did nothing. I had a ton of him. That was kind of frustrating because of how Lamar loves, or in years past has loved, to just target the shit out of the tight end, and then just decided today to not do that. Was a little frustrating. But any other takeaways at tight end? I mean, is it just a position where it's punt?
It's a position where you're likely going to be punting most weeks in cash if you can.
I'll be attacking Arizona Cardinals every single week.
It's been that way for 7 years too. It's kind of crazy.
But it hasn't changed. Like, even though Logan Thomas only got 4 catches, like he was open a ton.
Yeah. Luke Musgrave barely missed a huge play. He probably could have walked in for a 50-yard touchdown. If you had him,
two huge plays.
Yeah.
The other play where he stumbled twice. One of them he caught it. One of them he didn't. I don't know if he would have been able to catch up to the ball on the first one, but he was wide open, like butt naked, wide open, and just stumbled twice.
Yeah.
So
the one concern I did have about Likely is Baltimore has exponentially better receivers than they've had in years past. So it's not like he has to rely on his tight end as much. Likely at 3K on DraftKings was too good to pass. But on FanDuel, I definitely thought it was a decision. And I would have really liked to get up to Higbee in that team. I just didn't have the 600. I looked at dropping Chubb to a high 7K back. I looked at Chubb ETN, or I looked at ETN, but decided in the other direction there. I kind of anticipated that a bit.
Do you guys know who the one tight end was that played all the snaps? If you just had to guess.
That played every snap.
Yeah, there's no way you're going to guess it.
Adam Trautman.
I'm literally I'm actually kind of shocked that he did play every snap. Nope, not Adam Troutman. K. Falik.
I'm trying to think even what team it could be.
I'm seeing this correctly, which I didn't even realize, but Ruben got it. Smythe. Durham Smythe.
Or Durham Smythe. He didn't get his first name right.
Yeah, from Miami. He played it looks like he played all the snaps, which is interesting, I guess. I know he had a decent line. But I agree, like it's going to be one of those positions. The other guy I thought looked really good, didn't play on the main slate, played on the opening game. Sam Laporta. Yeah, Sam Laporta looked good. And I think his role is going to keep growing and growing as Jared Goff and him get more chemistry and stuff like that. Because you got to remember, Jared Goff has more chemistry with a lot of other guys on that team right now. But I think as it goes, I think he's going to be a guy who gets some big games here and there. So I think he's a guy to target.
Iowa's becoming tight end U very quickly.
Yeah,
for
real.
Got this guy in college right now that's pretty good too. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
What was the snap discrepancy between Parham and Everett, by the way? I meant to ask that.
Parham and Everett. So I got Parham played more than I thought too. Donald Parham played almost 50% of snaps, 49%. Gerald Everett played 68%. So Donald Parham played a good amount. And we know Donald Parham, I mean, he's there for his offense. He's there as a big body target who you can throw it up to.
Yep, those numbers, snap numbers aren't. I always say that the snap numbers for tight end is very deceiving. Like I think that's the most deceiving snap number is definitely tight end because the more important part is whether they're running routes. So you gotta look at the route numbers for tight ends for sure before making any decisions on what that looks like. In my opinion.
He's one of those guys, though. He's out there to catch the ball.
Oh, for sure. No, I know.
You know what I mean? So that's the good thing about guys like him is when he's out there, it's mainly to try and get him the ball and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the numbers. I mean, Dallas Goedert played 92% of snaps. Noah Gray played 88. I don't know if Travis Kelce's going to be back or not for sure, but if he's not, Noah Gray at 88%, it's a good amount. That's like top 6 or something like that, top 5. So, yeah, Cade Otton played 97. Cole Kmet played 97. Tyler Higbee played 91. And Smythe. Those were the 5 guys who played 90 or more % of snaps at tight end. So the rest were, 80s or lower. So that was that. I know the chalk defense smashed. I mean, that's going to happen when you play a team like Arizona. I feel like Arizona, everyone's just going to pick on them every year, every game probably. But, that's what happens. Do you guys fade the chalk defense in those scenarios? Like
in tournaments, I would definitely fade Commanders. I mean, that's a unique spot that you probably won't get the rest of the year. You don't normally see like the Commanders should have been 4K. Like them and the Niners were like the 2 best defense plays by a mile. On FanDuel, you saw that I punted. I'm always okay with full punting defense in general. And, the Bucs came away with 9 points for 3,100. So, that's typically the last spot I fill in. But I think I even cored the Commanders on DraftKings. I don't think I've ever cored a defense in my life. Yeah, I mean, in cash.
They were
just click them and move on.
They were just way too cheap, though. You know what I mean? They were just way
normally
too cheap,
there's a little more flexibility, which also led to this team being those 2 teams on DraftKings being so chalky because you had to play the Commanders defense and you never have to play defense.
This is going to be a really, again, I'm looking ahead at next week's slate or this week's slate, but we got some interesting defensive spots for sure based off of this last week where I don't think I've seen a 4,100 defense on DraftKings in years. The 49ers are 4,100. Cowboys, guess who they play next this upcoming week?
Zach Wilson,
4K. The Arizona is playing against the Giants. Giants got -1 points on defense this past week. They're 3,800. And then you go down and you have the Ravens playing Cincinnati when Cincinnati looked horrible, 2,800. The Jets playing Dallas at 2,700. It's going to be an interesting little slate for sure. Always is.
The Jets defense is going to have to keep that team in games. So The Jets are going to be ball hawking, trying to create turnovers. That's the one thing. Yes, they probably get killed by Dallas, but they are also like that team can create turnovers. They do have a good defense. So those are just things to kind of note. And Dak will throw interceptions. The problem is, though, if Dak doesn't have to throw that much and they just get ahead on teams like he's not going to have to take chances as much, and he's not going to make as many mistakes. So that's what you got to be careful of.
I think Tony Pollard's going to be an absolute stud this year too.
Yeah.
That's one.
He was a stud.
There wasn't much to take away from that Sunday night piece of shit. But Tony Pollard.
He's been a stud for the last 2 years. The problem was he just never got the Tony Pollard. Yeah, the problem was he never got the high value touches until the end of last year, or the middle of last year, where he started to get them. But that was always his issue. He always had the talent. He was always a good player. But yeah, I mean, I think we kind of went through this whole slate, reviewed it. Anything else you guys want to add? We'll obviously be in Discord if anyone has any questions. Obviously, Bryce, will mainly focus on cash. And I know there's guys out there that play cash and want to learn and stuff like that. No one better from a cash perspective to ask questions to than someone like Bryce. That's why when people ask me cash questions, I always just defer.
Yeah.
So I will still be deferring. I will still be deferring to Bryce and Mangone. So if you ever ask me a cash question, just know my answer is going to be at Third and Schlong, at Travis Mangone. What do you guys think? So just ask them the cash questions. Those are the guys you want the info from anyway. So Kevin, you're laughing. I would say if you want to stack the Texans every week, ask Kevin because he loves stacking the Texans.
No.
You just said it this week. You said this week that looks like a good game. It's a 40 total, and you're like, I love that game.
I said it's going to be an interesting game, and I didn't say that I'm going to be playing them, but I think
what are the odds that Kevin stacks that game? I put the odds at 50%. No,
0. But I must say that they're the normal afternoon schedule that people love playing these afternoon games. There is not a very good afternoon game total. 44.5, 40, 39.5, 38.5 are currently the 4 games in the afternoon. So I think you're going to see people trying to run away with it early this week.
This actually pleases me because I'm gonna be at a wedding on Sunday, and the wedding starts at 4:30 or 5. So I won't actually be able to fully watch the late games. I'll be able to watch all the early games, and then I'll have to leave. So this is my cousin's getting.
Can they throw those people in jail right after they get married?
I mean, seriously, if it wasn't my cousin, I would literally say no. I would literally be like, sorry, I can't do it. But it's my cousin, so I have no choice. I love my cousin. But I was like, on a Sunday? Are we serious? We're having a wedding on a Sunday during football? My wife was like, settle down. I was like, I won't say anything to anyone.
I had parents' night for my kid at school on the Thursday night that football started, and all the guys were standing there saying, how does this school not know that NFL opening night is basically a national holiday? What is wrong with our school?
Yeah, it should be. It should literally be. Nothing should be allowed to happen on the opening night of football. Everyone should be able to go out to a bar or at home. You shouldn't be doing stuff like that. They got to remember that. Football is the national treasure. You got the opening day is the best day of the year. Is NFL opening or opening Sunday, first Sunday of the year. But still, it's just football is awesome. I'm glad it's back. I'm gonna be pissed when I'm not at home watching football at 5 o'clock on Sunday. But I'll be back for the late night game because I told my wife we're getting home so I can make my showdown lineups before the game so I can watch that game. So
there we go.
I will still have all my content up. Don't you worry. And use that code NFL17. Get in now before basketball starts. Let's talk some football. We got showdown winners. I know my boy AP shipped for over 13 or 14K yesterday in showdown. Took down the $100 single entry max and a couple other contests. So shout out to my guy AP for a nice showdown shipper last night. And we'll have more as it goes on at Rumpier Sports. So join now, 17% off, code NFL17, and let's Rumpier together. For me, JSU, Third and Schlong, K Phallic. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hit the like button on your way out. We'll see you guys next week. We're out.